Hi, this is Julian for Pro Tools Expert. Here it is. This is Pro Tools 2020.11 running with a carbon. So we can see that we're running using a carbon because there it is. It shows up in the playback engine just like any other connected audio interface. On the subject of connection, this works connected via AVB to your Ethernet port, which is kind of unusual, but there's not a massive amount of setup involved. If we come into the hardware window, there's various things we can play with. But before we get in there, let's go to Audio MIDI Setup. And here it is. It shows up twice. That's because we've got some channels reserved for Pro Tools, and we've got some other channels that are available for system audio and other DAWs and things. But that's fine. It's normal. In terms of setting it up, if we right-click on here and go Configure Device, there it is. And there's some different setups that you can run. This is where, for example, if you want to run higher than 96K, you can do. That will use more system resources, but if you want to, you can do it, and you can do it from there. In the hardware setup window, we've got a few things in here. For example, the use of color coding does reflect itself back into the software, which is really nice. For example, you can run up to 3 sets of monitors. It does this by stealing lines 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 from the line out D sub on the back, but they then become controllable from the monitor control pot on the front, just like the main monitor outputs. And in the headphone sources, you can either run discrete mixes for discrete mixes, or you can get any one of those to mirror the monitor outputs. There's also some stuff you can do to do with changing the dim amount and changing talkback mic gain, and to do with the line in and out settings. So you can change the operating level, and also whether or not you've got gain available or whether it's fixed on the line inputs. So I'll leave those as they are for now. But while we're in there, I'll just come over here. We'll pop into the I/O window. And what we see is, we see the inputs, all 25 of them, if you count the talkback mic, which routes through the mixer, as it should do. But in the output side, we've got this color stuff. This is reflecting the colors that we saw in the hardware window. So, for example, we can also get some over here. If I change the settings on the headphones, which I'll do just to show you what I mean, hardware. And if I change these from being discrete outputs to mirroring the monitor outputs, then we'll see these colors appear over in the I/O window. Now, that has affected the headphone outputs, as it would do, but if we come back over into here and we come into the I/O window, we'll see that now we have this color coding to reflect the colors in use on the front panel. That was a nice touch, and I thought I'd point it out. So in terms of actually using the new features provided by Carbon in Pro Tools, here I've got a session set up that maxes it out effectively. I mean, we've got 24 inputs, and we've got 4 discrete headphone mixes set up, and some appropriate plugins in use, a couple of reverbs, and talkback. And all of these, at the moment, this is a 100% native session. And we can see that because if we look in the system usage, here's the DSP, and nothing really is happening on there. But that will all change as soon as I start using these buttons. These, if I hover over one for a tooltip, this is native mode at the moment, but if I click on one of these, any of them, doesn't matter. Here we are. That's significant. DSP mode has been automatically enabled for one or more tracks, the track I just clicked, to preserve low latency monitoring for the entire signal path. That's the important bit, for the entire signal path. So what we see is this has now gone green, tooltip DSP mode enabled. These have gone green to show that these inserts have now changed. They are no longer native, they're DSP. If I click one on a neighboring track, we'll see that one's native, but this one, this green one, is running in DSP. We'll see that there because here it is. Here's that DSP that's been enabled. It's not just that one though. We're not using that much for a single couple of plugins. It's saying 7 because there's some other things that have gone into DSP mode. here they are over here. Everything downstream, everything that this track feeds to, so we've got the monitor output and the master there, is in that green mode as well. This is like an implied green mode. I shouldn't call it green mode, an implied DSP mode, just because to preserve that low latency path, everything downstream of the track that I've enabled needs to be in DSP mode too. Same goes for all these headphone sends. I'm feeding to all 4 headphone sends, so they've all been put into DSP mode as well. So of my reverbs, I'll come back to those. Anyway, so that's how that works. And to switch it off again, just press it. Now, this is the hybrid part of the hybrid mixer, just because what we can have is we can have most of the mixer running natively, and then whichever bits we want to be in DSP mode so that they can access the low latency, we just switch manually. So that one, for example, or I don't think we need that anymore. I could just hold Option and Shift and then click to enable DSP mode on all selected tracks. So things are quite a bit busier now. We'll see that we've pretty much maxed out the available DSP. But now everything in this hypothetical band tracking situation could be done in low latency. All 24 inputs, all their headphone outputs, everything, no latency issues, exactly what we're looking for. However, here, as well as my EQs and compressors and safety limiters on my headphone sends and other stuff, and a couple of reverbs, I've also got some 11 Mark II amp sims running because I could track through those because it's all in DSP. These are really greedy. If you see what's going on, this is using a whole chip pretty much to itself. So if I want to create another one over here, I'm at run out of road. I've maxed everything out and it's not going to happen. And that's indicated by this brown colour. There is a way around this on this, just because I don't think that these 2 reverbs actually need to be in DSP mode. A bit of extra latency on a reverb, on a send return, that's not a problem. It's just a little bit of extra pre-delay and actually not even very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to elect to exclude these from that implied DSP mode. And I can do that by command clicking on these buttons. So just do that. And we get this lightning bolt with an arrow through it, and the tooltip there says DSP mode safe enabled. So that just means that this has been toggled manually out of that implied DSP safe mode. These have now gone back to being native plugins, which has freed up some DSP, which means that I can now switch that one on. So you see there's a little bit of flexibility in there, which is exactly what you need, because there are cases, like, for example, that reverb case, where you don't necessarily want stuff to be in DSP mode. It doesn't have to be. So that's pretty much everything there is to see, apart from there is a preference that I wanted to show you, which is in here, Operation, tab of Preferences, and we've got Enable DSP mode when tracks with hardware inputs are record, armed, or input enabled. If I switch that on, what's going to happen is that just by... Actually, let's just go back into native for everything so I can show you what happens. And then if I enable that one's enabled because I've toggled it on. But if I input enable this one, that one goes in automatically. If I come back out again, it stays in DSP mode. It doesn't toggle it off as soon as you come out of input monitor or record enable. So that's it. I mean, an awful lot happening, but thankfully very simple to use, which is exactly the idea. So yeah, that's Pro Tools 2020.11 running with a Carbon.